Good evening and thank you for joining me. This is Eric J. And right now I wanted to discuss something that is pretty well in the news. It is the National Emergencies Act, which was enacted by Congress in 1976. And I wanted to discuss how this act has in effect turned the executive branch into a monarchy. Now, that's a pretty inflammatory thing to say, but let me explain exactly what I mean by that. Now, ever since it was enacted, there have been no criteria placed on the presidency, no limitations placed on the presidency to define exactly what a national emergency is actually supposed to be. Now, I'm going to actually read directly off the act itself. This is Title 2, Section 201A. I'll actually put a link at the bottom in the description to the exact law, so that anybody who wishes to verify what I'm going to say can look directly at it. All it requires is that the president write in an executive order that he declares a national emergency and then submits that executive order to the Federal Register. It does not say that the president has to define the nature of a national emergency or place criteria upon the executive which states what a national emergency is supposed to be or the limited terms. Now, we'll get into the terminations of what exactly is supposed to terminate a national emergency. But just to reinforce, Congress provided a law which enabled powers into the executive which have no limitation on them, no boundaries whatsoever. In effect, creating a monarch, an absolute ruler who can decide what he wants to simply by writing out an executive order. Now, the only reason why every single president doesn't completely rule this way is because of the limitations about it, but really it's just about the political will in Congress. Now, do I blame any president for utilizing any of the National Emergency Acts as they have the past 51 times, the 39 that are still in existence? No, I don't blame them at all. They are merely utilizing the powers imbued upon the executive branch by the Congress. Now, I blame the Congress, which gave the executive this power, which did not require that the executive, first of all, within 5 to 6 days of enacting this each national emergency, to go before Congress and justify why he even did it, why whoever the president at the time even enacted the national emergency, giving Congress reason to allow funding and resources to be put towards addressing this national emergency. There's no sunset clause saying that a national emergency will only last up to this point unless justified by the executive branch to Congress to continue on with it. Congress either has to exercise the political will to put forward a concurrent resolution, or the president has to terminate it on their own. That's assuming that Congress bothers to put forward a termination date, which so far they haven't. They just continuously keep on recycling them out for over the decades that they've been in existence, which shows a complete lack of political will by Congress. The president does not include a termination date, then there is no termination date for this law to reflect upon. It would simply be whatever happens to be in the executive order. Now, there's no requirement that there happens to be a termination date, only if the president decides to include one, or if Congress decides to, like I said before, in the concurrent resolution, to supply one, assuming that they have the political will to even do that. The one limiter that they've enabled was a 6-month limitation, assuming that the concurrent resolution has not already put one forward. So every 6 months, Congress has to decide whether or not to terminate the the national emergency. It didn't say that the president has to go before Congress to justify it and allowing that 6 months to be a sunset termination of the national emergency. It'll just keep rolling along so long as that every 6 months Congress just continues to vote on it, which, like I said, that all goes into political will. And if the members of Congress happen to decide that it is politically suicidal for them to do so. They'll just keep on voting them through and then keep on devoting resources. That doesn't mean that a national emergency has to be in real existence at the time. It just means that they just keep on voting them in, as they have for 39 of them, for however many decades of it they have been in existence. All that they have to do is just continually vote on them to push them through. So essentially wasting resources on emergencies that don't actually need any more resources. Now, like I said, if the act itself was amended, telling the executive, no, this national emergency which you, the president, have enacted, that Congress, hopefully through amendment, would have already been advised of and authorized the president to maintain the processing of resources. If 6 months after that point the president went before Congress and said, no, we still need these resources and here's why, and then Congress now had justification to say, okay, we're not going to let this thing sunset, we're going to continue to push it on through and then continue to vote on it again and allow it. Now, like I said, if there was a sunset clause on here, like Congress has instilled in other laws, then it would mean that all funding, all resources for any national emergency would dry up at that 6-month period. Not go before Congress to find a reason just to justify it, but it would end on itself, which would in effect provide a necessary limitation. Now, let me reinforce something around here. When the Founding Fathers created the Constitution, they had just fought a revolutionary war against an absolute monarch with Great Britain. They did not want to have another absolute monarch in the executive branch. The executive was meant to serve the people, not to dominate based off of some random political nuance that the executive happens to decide justify the use of the people's money. Now, let me reiterate, I'm not blaming the executive for utilizing this power. The Congress is to be held accountable for the power that they imbue within the executive itself. So it's up to them to make the change, and it's up to us as the citizens to let them know our dissatisfaction for their essential political apathy. But addressing all of that, the Founding Fathers would never have wanted this level of unrestrained power to be imbued upon the executive, because, like I said, it just basically creates a monarch. And it is one of several laws that are still on the books that have enabled that, but I'll get into those in other videos. So I would just ask you, the listener, to continue to look at this and see exactly what your representative is enabling to happen through either our apathy as a voter or through our desire to allow them to continue to push on these kinds of laws, which put forth a level of executive authority that even the founders would not have wanted. Have a good evening. Also, should it pique your interest, for the enterprising mind, below is a link to the Tom Woods Liberty Classroom, where you can really expand your knowledge of free market economics, which is the same school of thought that great thinkers such as Milton Friedman as well as Murray Rothbard really championed. So go ahead and take a look at it through that link, as well as for those fans of Ron Paul, go ahead and check out his homeschool curriculum also below in the description box. Thank you for joining us this evening with our discussion. Please do yourself a favor, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the additional uploads that I make. Please remember to share with your friends and family so they can also join in and contribute to the discussion about government and our founding documents. Also, do yourself a favor and check out the other videos on my channel so we can continue the discussion even with them. God bless and good evening.